everyone. Welcome to today's edition of the Real Talk Roundtable, which is where basically my friends and I get together and we just talk about not so random, very important, controversial topics. My name is Ijoma Ofomado and I am the host of the Tribe TV, where this is holding. Yeah, we at the Tribe TV, we're just all about sharing information, resources that can really help people be better. And on the Real Talk Roundtable, we like to talk about conversations that people usually would not go to. We bring a godly perspective to it while also maintaining our very strong identities, which is the reason why I have these amazing women here. Actually, because we are nice, that's why we are safe. But a lot of times our opinions can go in different directions, like north, south, east at once. So I love that mix. It makes me happy. It makes me excited to be able to, bring those different perspectives, because I see people's voices and thoughts represented in it. However, you're still able to bring a nice balance to it. Anyway, let me not get so much into all the, just let me allow you explore the juice for yourself. So today we're talking about the real cost of relationships. And I feel like this one is kitty kata. Exploring, is love alone to sustain? I'm telling you, is love enough to sustain a relationship? And just how much personal sacrifices should you make to keep your relationship, starting from marriage? In fact, I think we should probably focus on marriage, because if you're in a relationship and you're already seeing any form of, you should just already run. So, I'm starting today. I'll pass it over to Wura. Wura is the self think for yourself. Mama, I want to pass it over to her. But let me run through some things before, so that it can help. So I'm just looking at, is love enough to sustain long-term relationship, or other factors like compatibility, communication, values just as important? What personal sacrifices are acceptable in the name of love, and how can individuals strike a balance between giving but also maintaining their identity so they don't get lost in the process? How can couples navigate situations where the cost of love feels too high without losing the essence of the relationship? Maybe this is a lot. Maybe we'll come back to it one by one, but
I think so, because I'm starting to lose track. My mommy brain is kicking in. Yeah, so the first bit, is love enough to sustain a relationship? I think no, for sure. Love is probably like a starter, but I think there's a lot of investment in terms of time, effort, communication, and a lot of things that you need to use to sustain that love in itself, because the love in itself needs to be sustained. And I think what happens in most relationships is that we see the excitement or the chemistry that comes out from the initial relationship based on how we feel about each other. And that high and that excitement is what keeps us going at the beginning. And when we start getting in close quarters, like you're married, you see each other every day, at that point, I think it gets to a point, people say it's see finish. I don't think it's see finish. It's not that you don't have regard for that person anymore. It's that you feel comfortable with the person you're living with, to the point that certain things you don't feel the need to go or do extra. And I think that's where most people get it wrong. Most people, the moment they get married, they stop hurting themselves. And that's where issues come in. And I also believe that compatibility is one thing. You mentioned about compatibility. It should have even been the basis of coming together in the first place. Because if you're not compatible with the person you're going to marry, I'm not sure why anybody is in the business of getting married in the first place. So, yes, that's why I have issues with all this. But maybe let's not go there. Like all those people that there's a lady. Let me just digress a bit. There's this documentary that I watched, this past documentary with people who said there's a lady that got married to someone only on the basis of the fact that somebody told her that this is the person you're supposed to know on spiritual level, and that was it. There was no love, there was no chemistry, there was nothing between them. I believe love is important. I believe understanding guidance from God is important. I believe compatibility is important. And I believe all of those things would help you eventually sustain that relationship that you have. And I also think that when you go into your relationship, especially marriage, you shouldn't go with the mindset of measuring how much love or how much the level of sacrifice I can make for this person. At that point, I think that is even a problem. The moment you're trying to say, if you need to, how do I say it? You need to meet me halfway. That mindset is already even a problem. Or maybe if you don't do this for me, then that's the my threshold. The moment you get to that point, once you start building the mindset of the goal or the level of sacrifice you want to make for somebody, I think that's already a problem in my own view. I already see you looking somehow.
Exactly.
I have to emphasize in my own view. And I think that does not how do I say, it doesn't take away the fact that you still need to have your boundaries. You don't lose yourself in any relationship you find yourself, even in marriage. You don't have to be, but you should never go in with the mind that when it gets to this point, I know. But I think one thing that I would always say is a no-no is abuse. Physical, emotional, verbal, any form. That's one thing that I think people need to find a way to separate themselves from such situations when they find themselves in those situations. Anything outside of that, I think one should never go into marriage saying, oh, this is the level of sacrifice I'm going to make for this person. If this person cannot meet me halfway, then me too, I will not live or do my own part. Because that mindset would already mean that you're measuring them against a failure yardstick. So the moment they fail up to the point where you're expecting them to fail, you would react. And at that point, the process will break down. And I think also at times, a major issue is non-communication. People also have expectations of what they want from their partner, but they never really communicate it. I was listening to one therapist the other day. The family had been married for about 5 years, and she brought our husband to for marriage counseling. Our husband said, "I don't know why we are here." And when she started seeing the things on her, she broke down and cried so much. And all the things that she said were actually valid. But the husband said, "You never told me this was a problem. You never said anything. I never knew it was a problem." And she said, "I expected you to know." To be honest, this is my mindset as well. At times, we have expectations of what we want from other people on the basis of the fact that we expect them to know what they need to do. But as long as we do not communicate, you cannot justify. Me too, I still falter in such situations. But as long as long as we do not communicate, even if we feel it is glaring, open communication is always important. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, communicating their expectations to their partners. Most people don't do that. I think at this point, I have touched on the first two points that you mentioned. Yeah.
Hey, Ola.
I always used to say as well, Mura, that love is not enough. Love is not enough. You need more, you need more, you need more. And very recently, I had to sort of study the part of the Bible that really defines love. And I opened it now, 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. And looking at all the components of love, being patient, being kind, resilience, faith, hope, endurance, perseverance, like all of those things that those verses say. I think it pretty encompasses what maybe non-religious or non-Christian definitions of love bring up, like issues like compatibility and all of that. I think when you define love right, and when you are operating from a holistic understanding of what love is, it really is enough. When all of those different components that you've mentioned are
Yeah. But can I interject?
Yeah.
I think that is the ideal. But you need to realize that as humans, we've not reached perfection. We'll be perfected until the coming of Christ. Meaning that in all of these areas, in all of this, some fruits of the Spirit, even mentioned as some of the things expected for you to do
Yeah.
to be able to express love.
Yeah.
People are still growing in it. And that's why I would agree with you in one way. Like, if you tether yourself to God, you will be loving the person through the eyes of God. And on that basis, maybe you'll be able to work things out. But the reason why I struggle with this is that most times, if it's not both parties working with that mindset, and that's the issue of compatibility, if the two of them cannot agree, they cannot achieve anything. If one person continues to love as we've been taught to love as children of God, and the other party continues not to express love the same way, I think it will continue to, the relationship will break down at some point. And I think that's where communication comes in. Because that's the point where you can communicate to the person their lapses. But I think above communication, I think that's also where prayer comes in. I remember sharing, I cannot remember this Bible verse for the life of me. It's this part that talks about a believing partner, cleansing or covering an unbelieving partner. I think it's important that when you've looked at love from the perspective of how God deals with it, communication is important. And on top of that, prayer and covering by the person who is believing for the person who is still trying to catch up also matters. So that's why I said the ideal is how love is defined in the Bible. But to be honest, we all do not possess that quality yet.
Yes.
All the qualities yet.
Maybe
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Maybe not all the time, but it is our aspiration.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for me, why I started with that is because I think those verses are a call to your standard.
Exactly.
I think that a lot of times we conflict love for feelings. So the whole butterfly in the belly, I feel
exactly
about them. I love them because they make me feel this way. They complete me. All those very flowery aspects of defining love, right? But when it comes to the nitty-gritty, it is how much you can have faith in the person, how you're able to think the most of the person, even at the moments when they've shown you their worst. It's how you're able to say, yes, I'm not going to put my desires and my feelings first all the time, because love is not selfish. I'm not going to be jealous of this person because, when we got married, I was earning 10 naira and this person was earning 2 naira, and now they're earning 15 million and I'm about to start, comparing myself. I'm not going to do that, because love wants the best for the other person at all times. So I said that for us to have a common standard, that love is the decision you make to be and do these things. Like to say, as I've entered this union, as I've entered this contract, this is how I'm going to keep my side, and this is how you're going to keep your side. If we have all of those ingredients in it, if we have all of them complete, then love is enough. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah. I fully agree with you. On that ground. So filial love is not enough, but the love of God is enough.
Yeah, so I was going to say that it depends on which love we're talking about. Because when we think of love in the context of male-female relationships, the first thing we think of is what Ola referred to. The blue-eyed, he makes gives me butterfly. Meanwhile, I'm trying to remember if my husband gave me butterfly in my belly. But that's a conversation for another day. Butterfly in the belly, all those things, which are good for a start, like Wura said. But if we take love back to what it should be, love is actually a commitment. It's a decision that you make. Love is an action word. It's not a feeling thing. Someone asked this question, if love is enough. The next question should be, it depends on which part of which love you're talking about. Because if it's the world's view of love, then that one is not enough. Which is being carried away, you like the person, and just that good feeling that someone gives you. But if it's the love from God's viewpoint, it is enough. Because the other things that we want, when we say, okay, when we switch over to the world side and we say love is not enough, we need compatibility, we need this, we need that. All those things are contained in God's love as a package. So what the world has done is to split it out, but bring it back, because I'm looking at the scripture now. It says love is patient and love is kind. That comes into relationships, that comes into communication. Love is not jealous, it's not boastful, it's not proud, it's not rude, it does not demand its own way. So you don't always force your way, it's not irritable, it keeps no record of being wrong. So if you look at all this, it doesn't rejoice about injustice, but rejoice whenever the truth wins out. It doesn't give up, it doesn't lose faith, it's always hopeful, it endures through every circumstance. Now, like Wura said, this is also perfect when it's both parties. Especially that love part, that last part of enduring through every circumstance. Things are not always going to be rosy and all that, but there are sometimes, even when you have disagreements, that forget though that we're having disagreement. I know that we're on one team. You just find a way to work it out. Okay, we have made a promise that we're not going to be angry, so let's just settle to continue the quarrel tomorrow.
You fight fair and you fight kindly.
Yes. And then the next morning, we are back to, we saw that. But there's this understanding that we're on the same team. We're not against each other. But that's coming together of two people who just really, have God, who just honor God. I think it's really, really important. But then that brings me to my next question. Now, we have to agree that it's not everybody or every marriage that where both parties are putting God at the center, right? And depending on where people are coming from, sometimes people are just in something for themselves, not because they really want to be, but that's how their life is, or the life is for them at that point in time. What personal sacrifices are acceptable in the name of love? And how can individuals strike a balance between giving and maintaining their identity? And I love this question because I remember that we had a conversation around this recently, and I had someone who came to me and was like, her marriage and the rest. And I just felt there to ask her then. Because even after I had a conversation with Wura and Ola, I don't ask myself, but in a way, Wura was right though. Why was I asking? But I remember that just came to me. I was like, what did God tell you about your marriage? And she was like, it's true, she's not been prepared. I was like, before you start complaining, go back and use the weapon that God gave you. Sometimes have the subtle thing of blaming, and a lot of times it's the woman, sometimes it's not, but a lot of times it is, where the woman is made responsible for someone's irresponsibility, and yes, I'm not a proponent for divorce or all those things. I don't even know if I don't want to even talk about. I'm not talking about divorce or anything, because I feel like that issue is very, very
sensitive.
If someone feels that just go and meet a professional marriage counselor, a professional Christian marriage counselor, I can recommend Pastor Kingsley for you. Pastor Kingsley Okonkwo and his wife. But let's get back. Sacrifices are acceptable because sometimes people could end up losing themselves in trying to be the picture of what they feel their spouse wants to be. There's a lady I like to call her a strong woman. She's a top lady in tech, and Bola, she said in the message one, she was like, I put up something, she was like, the strong husband of a strong woman. I was like, this is why people always calling me strong woman, but and I started thinking about it. I was like, to truth be told, it's not easy to be my husband because I'm very, so it's not easy to marry me. I'm very people don't understand. My mother keeps saying that only my husband could have married me, and I agree with that because I'm quite stubborn. But then It got me thinking. There are some top women out there that are doing amazingly well. And you now find out that along the line, their marriages, and then there's one particular one, I don't know, I don't think I want to mention her name, but she's doing amazing well. She's an icon. She has 2 kids. In fact, when their kids are celebrating stuff, you see the guy, she and her husband, they have a cordial relationship. So you know that it's not like there's something serious, but they're just wrapping everything. What personal sacrifice is acceptable in the name of love? How can individuals strike a balance between giving and maintaining their identity? How, when the things that you want, they are different from what your spouse wants, and you're already inside the marriage. It's like, is there wisdom? Is there a way to just navigate it? All things being equal, that you're married to a sensible person. It's just that he's not seeing your perspective. Because the person is not sensible, I don't know. That one is professional marriage counseling. So yeah.
Well, let me talk a bit about this one. I think maybe the easiest one is always the marriage where both parties are really, when their marriage is founded on not just their relationship with themselves, but their relationship with God. Because what I've experienced, at least most times, is when I'm problematic, I will use my example. When I'm problematic in conversations with my husband, I realize that it takes a breather. And when it comes back and we talk about it, I feel at times his reflection of maybe the conversation we had is also his reflection, or maybe his thoughts with, how do I say, his reflection with God, so to say. Me, I feel at times like God intervened in his mind, or maybe he had a personal talk with God about it or something. And because at times, it's, to be honest, it's difficult to change the next person's mind. And it's even more difficult where you're running on different wavelengths. If one party is really in line with God and the other party is not. So on that basis, I think there's no level of sacrifice you cannot make for your marriage. The only thing you should ask yourself, and your partner should be able to answer, the sacrifice they're asking you to make, is it because of their own ego? Is it because of their own personal interests? Or is it because of the common interest of the union? And I think there are times that when people cut themselves down to the size that their partner wants, most times it's not really because it benefits the marriage, because it's just because maybe it benefits the partner's interest. And that's why, for me, I think once you start getting to the point where you're always, there's one particular party, whether male or female, that is always like making the sacrifices, I think at that point people need to seek external help, to be honest. A lot of people don't realize that, because the moment there's a breakdown in your communication or your ability to be able to reach certain conclusions yourself, seek help where it's needed. As a child of God, look for a Christian marriage counselor that can help you guys understand the breakdown in the communication of, and at times people make the mistake of asking their pastor. It's not a bad thing, but most pastors are not trained to be counselors. At times, the teachings they give are based on personal experiences, and that doesn't always work. It doesn't always come from a place of understanding of how this makes things work, together with the understanding of, God's direction or God's teachings about this thing. So, for me, I would say that the moment you and your partner are not making sacrifices on the basis of what is good for your union, and such sacrifices are based on what serves one person's ego or the other, then there's a problem. At that point, you either need to seek help or sit together and find a way to resolve it. And sorry, I didn't remember the second question. I was stuck on this one when you were talking, but yes, I think, and one should never, like I said before, one should never go into marriage thinking that this is the extent of sacrifice I cannot make. But one should go into one's marriage already letting your partner know the spaces you want to operate, the goals you want to have, the things you want to do when it comes to your academics, your social life, your children, how you want to do all of those things. You need to communicate that. And on that
Right.
basis, if someone truly loves you, they will support you. They will support you on that basis. And you guys can find a way to bring your goals together. And at times, it can mean that one person will pipe down a bit so that one person can push forward a bit. And then when the time comes, the other person, slows down a bit so that the other person can move forward. It's all based on ensuring that whatever you do is for the basis and for the interest of your joint union, not to serve one single person's interest. So I think that's the only way it can work in my view. Yeah. Probably as you guys share more, maybe I'll also have additional perspectives.
Okay.
I think this one is really loaded. And I have very strong opinions about it because my first encounter with this particular issue was as a child, observing and being in my parents' marriage, like being first hand witness of my parents or the dynamics in my parents' marriage.
Yeah.
Just a little more context. My parents' marriage was intertribal. It was interreligious. So you can already see that there was a lot of, I would say, difference, like core differences starting the marriage. But it is interesting now that it's not those things that are obviously different that caused the issues in the marriage. At least the issues I observed as a child. And there was some conflict around my mom's economic participation, like her business, how she ran her business, how much time it took her away from home, how much time she spent outside, how late she came home. I saw that caused a lot of issues. And on the flip side, later down the line, when she could not operate the business, I also saw how her inability to contribute as much as my dad wanted her to also caused conflict. Right? And that's why I brought that in is because Ijoma referred to, like, if you're already in the marriage, you don't have time to have those conversations before marriage, or something happened that there was a breakdown and you find yourself inside the marriage. Looking back now, I look at my mom, and my mom she's very vocal about it. She regrets, like, losing some parts of herself within the context of marriage and within the context of motherhood as well. And when I think about sacrifice, my mom was the epitome of sacrifice because we had very peculiar circumstances that made her carry on a lot of, sacrifice a lot of her advancement, personal, professional advancement, to be able to cater to those circumstances at that time. And this is where I agree with Rura saying, any sacrifice that you are making that is for the good of the family, the common good of the family, which is you're making it intentionally, the other party is supporting you as you make it, the other party is kind, of course, that's great for the home. But I think caution has to be had when you are the only one who is constantly making sacrifices within the context of your marriage. I do think that the moment you spot, like you start any kind of resentment, any kind of sort of ill feeling towards the other, your spouse, because you feel like you are always the one sacrificing, then a very clear communication needs to be had to fix that balance. And when I talk about balance, I'm not talking about 50-50. Does 50-50 even exist? It's not 50-50. But it literally has to be like a ball that is being passed. to keep the equilibrium of the marriage. If one person is always sacrificing their career, one person is always sacrificing their financial status, one person is always sacrificing their mental health, one person, of course, that creates a very big imbalance within the context of the marriage. And however you want to do it, getting someone who's a mentor that your spouse really respects, play the role of like referee if communication has broken down, or like you and Laura mentioned, a Christian therapist and all of that. But I would say that it is really important for me personally, as a person, as Ola, it's really important for me that me and my husband, individually in our marriage, we don't lose ourselves and the core of our individual identity within the marriage. As much as two have become one, you still have two lives in the marriage. So you have one marriage where both of you are working together to make it work. But within that marriage, you still have two lives, two careers, two sets of individual dreams and aspirations that many times will not simply come together. And that joint union will fail if at any level on the individual end there is a feeling of inadequacy. So I think that where there is a sense that the other party is not sharpening, is not doing their best at least to sharpen the other and create room for the other to grow, when identity of self is being eroded and it's almost like you have to fold yourself into the dreams and aspirations of the other person. Like you don't have a choice in the matter. It's not a conclusion that you both have come to as something being good for the home. Then I think it's time to start shouting out. I really don't think that there's such a thing as like an endless kind of sacrifice. And maybe that's where I disagree with Laura. I don't think that
I didn't say endless sacrifice though.
You said we should not.
No, I said you don't create boundary. Don't come with the mindset of saying this is my yardstick.
And I kind of agree, man, because that we should come with the joy of preserving individual identity.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's important that you communicate what you want.
Yeah.
And on that basis, you can align. Yeah. So it's not to lose yourself. But my issue is most times when you've created, people will always say you need to know what you stand for, otherwise you fall for anything. At times, it just creates a situation where you have a litany of items. Like you're rating that person against. I say, okay, one, I'm just giving you two more strikes. Two more strikes.
You know that there is a problem that needs solving. If you don't have bounds.
And that's why I said, see, you know what happens? At times, I wanted to say something earlier and permit me to say this, and I also have the same issue because I have exactly the same background, not exactly the same background, but the same family dynamics you have as well. My dad is a Muslim and I'm a Christian. They are from the same, what do you call it? They're from the same tribe, but they were totally from raised, how do I say it? They were not raised the same way, so to say. My dad came from a very traditional background, my mom. So for that reason, I also can relate with what you're saying. But what I was trying to say is that it's important that you set your goal to ensure that it aligns, you indicate what you want. But at times, we allow the trauma or the experiences we've had to be the yardstick of our future relationships. And at times, that I'm just speaking to the specific situation. So at times, we also need to be careful about that, because on that basis, we don't want to lose guard. Because maybe my mom lose guard a bit. So for that reason, I don't want to. We need to be careful. But to answer your question, that at what point, and that's why I said the moment we start deviating from common good, and the moment it seems like it is one person.
So just that's a boundary.
That's a boundary. Yes, that's a boundary. But I'm saying don't tie it to an event or something. But
That's a
Indeed, I fully agree with you. There has to be
very
a
wordy.
boundary. Yes, a very,
There's
yes,
also,
very worthy.
yeah, there's also something I always say that your marriage cannot give you all the joy and fulfillment that you need in life. There's that overburdening of what your marriage
Your
represents.
husband is not the Holy Spirit. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, oh, now that I'm married, therefore, and even some people, for them, their wife is supposed to solve every problem, on the home front. It's like,
As per Proverbs 21,
I'm
31 woman.
married wife now, therefore, right?
Mm.
And I also think that's always a problem when it comes to the expectation of sacrifice. And we need to correct that. We need to correct that because it's very harmful and it leads to toxic dynamics sometimes. When you expect so much that the other person will be the answer to every problem in your life, it's like that's why some women have killed their husbands asking for weak money, because it's like they can't see beyond the fact that to get this one straight, I can actually there are 5,001 sources. They can't look beyond the fact that, oh, my husband has positioned himself as the provider, therefore he's El Shaddai. Every everything that I want, he must provide. And when he doesn't provide, it affects how I feel, it affects my emotions, it affects my well-being and all. And the pressure on the man as well. It's like I have to take 15 million different side gigs to be able to meet up to that expectation. And I also think it's something that couples need to step back and say, my spouse is my spouse. My life is made up of several other components. You have the purpose that you're fulfilling. You have sometimes, for those who have kids or want kids, parenthood. You also have a relationship with your extended family. You are a well-functioning person of society who's supposed to contribute. You're supposed to solve problems in the world. In fact, that's why we were all created. Marriage is, just one of the tools to changing society. Is one of the tools. Creating the family unit is one of the tools. It's not the only way that you should be existing and you should be deriving joy and fulfillment. So also you need to check yourself if at any point your marriage is the only source of your joy or the only place where you have a function as
Fulfillment.
a human being. I think that is a very, very, it's a bold red flag. And it's a sign that you're probably putting too much expectation of sacrifice, of effort, and everything on your spouse. I've talked too much. I will shut up now.
No, 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 no. I totally follow because you raised very, very important issues. And I think maybe one thing I wanted to also digress a bit on the basis of what you said is in terms of providing as well. At times I feel like when you are in a relationship, especially marriage, this is a very touchy subject. Do you lose yourself? Let me pose it as a question. Do you lose yourself by having a common purse? Or do you
Actually,
feel
that is going to be. We can talk about it. We can talk about it now, but
oh okay, it's yeah, it's a very
Topic of
sensitive topic.
it's on finances. You're talking about finances, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, actually. The third point, the third topic I shared, I want to merge it into this one because it's the same
Oh,
thing.
okay.
So I was already saying that from the poll we ran, the next thing we can talk about now is let me bring it out. So it says money and marriages, tackling how finances impact relationships.
want to be there. I will take the front seat.
Yes, it's actually your call. That one is your call. That's the third one.
Ah.
But we can talk. We can talk. I know we can talk a
No,
little
no, no. Let's not talk
more.
about it.
We
Yes,
can talk
then
about
let's
them.
leave it till then. Yes, yes, yes. Because I just wanted to say, yeah, that's one very touchy issue in
I
relationships as well. And I
I
think at
agree.
times when not managed properly, people can also lose themselves as
I
a result
totally.
of that. If you're not well informed about what it means to have oneness, even in finances, there still has to be some identity.
Yeah.
I agree, because I remember that I had to do some video from, I think, Pastor Kingsley on this topic for me to really get to a place. But let's leave that discussion for later, because my husband was coming from a background and I was coming from another background, and let's leave that for first. So guys, make sure you watch out for the finance topic. But okay, so let's answer the first. I begged these people, I begged them that this talk is supposed to be only 35 minutes, but I knew. But let's get to the last. So now, thinking about marriage and all this, so let's take it back to before you jump in and after you jump in. Does the idea of, so is there really something like the one? You know, I was watching a Christmas movie with my husband yesterday, and the girl just the movie was about on Netflix. So she met someone randomly in the airport, and then somehow they okay, we say we don't have time. Anyway, she just thought the person was the one, and this girl was going to break all sorts of protocols to meet the person somewhere. Funny enough, in the process, the person who was trying to help her get a ticket to go and meet the person, she ended up falling in love with the person. And then she kept still saying that this one that the universe is leading her to. Do you think there's an idea of the one? And do you think that creates an unrealistic expectation that hinders people from fully embracing imperfections of real relationship?
To be honest, I don't think there's the one.